that entire deal. Prop 106, I think it's kind of a toss-up, depending on who you are. It's a toss-up between 106 and 113, which is the most important thing on our ballot. The healthcare issue, 106, is hugely important. This initiative, or this petition, or proposition, I'll get the word eventually. This proposition, 106, is the Arizona Healthcare Freedom Act. It will do two things, and two things only, here in the state of Arizona. And then it's got a federal role, which is the third thing we'll talk about. But here in the state of Arizona, it will prevent governments from telling you that you must join a specific insurance plan that the government's devising. All right? It also makes it so that they cannot fine you or tax you or otherwise prod you coercively into joining one of those plans. It does not affect access. It has no effect on the access program here in Arizona. If you are unfortunate enough to join the access program, it usually means you're low income. If you're in that situation, you join access, the government is paying the piper, and the government's going to call the tune on that one. So you're stuck. This is not going to give you the option of any doctor you want under access. When you start taking a government health insurance plan, be advised, the government may pull the plug on certain services. So anyway, so it's not going to do that for access. In fact, the old version, we almost passed another version of this 2 years ago. It barely lost. Lost by less than one half of 1% of the ballot. Let me go through this so that my brain will, and then we'll stop after each proposition. We'll answer questions. So the one thing it'll do is prevent government from telling you that you must join an insurance plan mandate. The second thing it will do is prevent governments here in Arizona from telling you that you cannot take your own money. This is going to sound like duh. Like, why do we need that? This is to prevent governments from telling you that you can't take your own money and pay for legal medical services. And you're going, why would they ever do that? Well, that's because every single socialist healthcare system, eventually the logic of that, because it's Econ 101, they subsidize the demand side of healthcare consumption. Duh, prices go up. And eventually the government is in a position, if they're paying for this stuff, to then try to figure out how to control costs. Government only knows one way to control costs, and that is by setting a price ceiling, which we also call rationing. This is Econ 101. They will get to this point at some point, sooner or later. You all know about, everybody know who Ezekiel Emanuel is? Yeah. Okay, so he's the guy who's kind of masterminding the administration's eventual plan to start telling Americans that they can't have certain healthcare services. And eventually the logic is you don't even want, it's Canadian style, you don't want people going off the res and using their own cash to buy the service, because then they continue to, anyway. And then the socialists don't like that, because then there's a two-tier thing and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, this is to prevent the worst aspects of socialized medicine taking place here in Arizona under Arizona governance. Now, the big question is, they've already passed this thing in Washington. How does this help us? What this does is it helps us because we at the Goldwater Institute and attorneys general across the United States are going to be in one or more lawsuits. Currently, there's many lawsuits. They may all put them all in one lawsuit to challenge the Obamacare mandate. And at that point, it'll be nice when we go to the Supreme Court you did say a prayer before this meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Please pray for those 5 people who vote right most of the time on the Supreme Court. We can't lose a single one of them. When this, God willing, gets before that particular group of 5 people, or if it gets dragged out past 2012, maybe a different group, but whatever, we hope there's at least 5 conservatives on that court. We have a very strong chance of establishing that this is yet another area of health care which belongs to the states, does not belong to the federal government. And anybody who's actually read the Constitution, which is everybody in this room, you understand Article 1, Section 8. It's all unconstitutional, but unfortunately that's not where the current Supreme Courts, the recent Supreme Courts draw their line. We're hoping that they will continue to draw a line How many of you remember the right to die case, or whatever you want to call that, euthanasia, assisted suicide in Oregon? That went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme decided that this is an area, healthcare, which is still in the state, still in state jurisdiction. It's still a matter for state court control, state government control. The idea is state solutions for state problems. So what we're hoping is that that line of reasoning will continue. The other thing too is that there's really never been a federal mandate of this kind. So we're hoping that the novelty of that will be something that the 5 on the court will be able to shoot down. So, and it'll help to create that presumption of state power by having it in our Arizona Constitution. So that's 106 in a nutshell. And do you still have a question?
What about Medicare?
No impact whatsoever on Medicare. For better or for worse. No impact on Medicare. Yes, sir?
So if 106 was to pass, the federal law would still trump it?
That is what has to be fought in the Supreme Court. That exact issue is exactly what is going to go to the Supreme Court by several avenues. And that's what we've been talking about. We think there's a very good chance, if the current 5 people stay alive and stay on the court, there's a very good chance that they will strike down the Obamacare mandate. Yes, sir?
You said that there were 2 things that this proposition does. On the second one, you used the phrase legal health services. Why is legal?
The lawyer team that helped design this 2 years ago, and then this time again, worked very closely with the Right to Life groups, because the idea, they wanted to make sure this was not a backdoor way to legalize abortion services, which are some people consider health services. So the idea is that if the state of Arizona were at some point to make abortion illegal, then you could not, because it's illegal, you can't take cash out of your pocket and go pay for it because it's illegal. Just like, anyway, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Shouldn't we be against Medicare? Aren't we forced into it?
That's I mean, part of the problem with an entitlement like that, what do you do about people that are 55 years old, 60 years old, 65 years old, and have basically been on a track and have been railroaded into this system? It's not a good place to be. As a senior, wondering every 2 years whether Congress is going to pull the plug on services that you've gotten used to, wondering if they're going to get tired of spending so much money on seniors and bring Ezekiel Emanuel into the business. You know, I mean, it's a terrible place for seniors to be, but you don't. I don't think anybody who's serious in the modern political landscape is talking about ever pulling people who are already 55, 60, 65 years and older, pulling them out of that system as a shock. That's you can't do that to people. So even the most hardcore libertarian types that I know, who are opposed on principle to Medicare, realize that you just can't pull the plug on people who are who are already dependent on the system and are not going to be going out. You can't tell a 55-year-old person, oh, go out now and work for 20 more years, 25 more years, and build up enough money to fund your own entitlement. Does that make sense?
No.
No, I understand. I understand the hardcore libertarian argument that it's immoral. We should never set this program up. We should try to figure out a way over the long haul to get people to where they're paying for their own health care services. I understand that. But I think most people in this country would agree that it's not a good idea to just completely delete the system immediately, especially for people that are older.
But that's not what 106 addresses.
Yeah, 106 doesn't touch Medicare in any case.
Well, the fact of the matter is if the financial system collapses at some point, we won't have a choice. In other words, we may be facing that reality anyway, what this gentleman's referring to. But I mean, we may be looking at a drastic reduction in Social Security and Medicare.
Yeah, I mean, the key trick, if you're a sneaky politician over the next 40 years and you want to starve Medicare, is what you're going to do is you're going to denominate Medicare benefits in dollars, which is that green paper we have in our wallets, and then Bernanke and his successors are going to devalue that dollar until it's no longer buying very much. So by hook or by crook, one way or another, the system is going in that direction. So the question is, how can we, is there a way now to try to preserve the promises we've made to people who are already beyond their ability to change out of the system? Can we preserve those promises for those people, but somehow get the next generation out of it and make the transition payments somehow? And that's the best attempt made at that is Paul Ryan's plan in Congress, which is the roadmap plan. And we all need to, as a country, need to take a very careful look at Paul Ryan's plan, because it's the only game in town. It's the only CBO scored plan that has any attempt whatsoever to try to fix this. Now, I think it's too little, too late. I think if his plan is to reduce federal spending down to about 19.6% of GDP, there is no room for error on that. I mean, anything that comes up, you think we're going to get in another war in the next 50 years? I mean, that's not in there. If everything goes right, the Paul Ryan plan on paper seems to take care of the long-term entitlement prices, the funding of that. But I think we need to go a little further. Yes, sir. Before we get off of 106, because we've got 9 other propositions.
But aren't the promises of Johnson just as bad as the promises of Obama?
Yeah, I think so. But and the promises of FDR. And
What's so magic about being 65?
I understand completely from a point of view of libertarian individualism, individual property rights. Absolutely. At some point you say, well, what promises can you continue to keep? If they promise everybody the moon, tomorrow can we keep that? I understand that problem. I think on a basic humanitarian level that you're talking to most people in the country. Most people in the country do not and will not pull the plug on people who are 60, 65 years old.
It's okay. Go ahead.
We're done? Okay. All right. Next one to make sure we get through, just in case we have lots of questions on every single one. Let's go to 113. Sorry to bounce around on you.